in regard to the narrator, monologue, dialogue, exposition stock, I think that I have found a way to properly articulate my point. It's about a story that I don't want to read about. I want to be there, experience it, and that has massive implications concerning the various tools at the writer's disposal, ways to present the story to the reader. So what I associate with all this is for the character through whom I am supposed to experience the world, to interact with the characters and the world around that character rather than interact with me, the reader, outside of the book in the real world. And again, a big warning, this has nothing to do with any sort of official definitions or even with logic. This is simply about how certain ways of writing, how use of particular elements of writing makes me feel, and how immersed I end up being when I am subjected to them. And for now, all that culminates in me heavily preferring the protagonist commenting on the world around him and someone responding to him rather than the protagonist having his inner monologue that no one within that world can react to because they cannot possibly know that it is happening. That is not me saying that I don't want that at all under any circumstances. That is not true. And that applies to exposition or descriptions that are really just observations made by the protagonist for the protagonist and by extension me the reader. But I want to tone that down, limit it to only the cases where I find it necessary and vital to properly describe what I need for the story to unfold properly, and also keep awareness of the fact that there can't always be characters around the protagonist who he can talk to, that there are circumstances during which dialogue should be impossible, and it being there would either distract from the situation on hand or would be straight up incomprehensible and outright delusional from me, the writer, to try and force it in. I am going to expand upon this topic in the future, but for now, that's all I wanted to say, and moving on to better things, or at the very least, more coherent, the rapid arrows and their exploits. For now, the issue of the renewal of their badges of courage is at hand, and Mr. Fogler, I don't know if cowardly or tactically skipped over the supposed scary story that Mirag was telling them before heading out for the test itself. So on the next page there is just one comment from Speedy how terrifying that tale was. Then Mirag picks up four small sticks, which he will then carry into the forest, and each one of the boys will have to bring back one of them to prove their courage, and he references one of Mr. Fogler's earlier works, Boys of the Beaver's River, and their leader called Rikitan, who was similarly to Mirag this ideal, this picture of honor and courage but also true nobility, strength, and patience, who would teach younger city boys the ways of the outdoors, using stories of another boy, a son of a ranger, raised by his tough and skilled father, and a Native American who, in those stories, teaches him the ways of the nature itself, and using these chronicles, Rikitan attempts to show the younger boys different ways of approaching the world around them. He puts great emphasis on leading by example and more or less just showing the different ways rather than forcing anyone to follow him or ordering them to do anything. And Rigitan was the one who introduced those 13 beavers, the badges of various good values a young man in this case should strive for. And he used the word beaver because of the stories of the boy called Roy who managed to hunt actual real beavers in those stories thanks to the skills taught to him by his father and the Native American, which became metaphorical hunt for those beavers trying to claim those badges. So a small excursion to one of Mr. Fogler's other works. And on a side note, I've just noticed something since this chapter deals with courage and hunting the beaver of courage. At the top, right next to the title of this chapter, is a picture of Speedy wielding his trusty weapon, one of his shoes, as was displayed in one of the earlier chapters, that brings him the feelings of security. And within the chapter itself, Speedy is a bit nervous, trying to justify his abstention from participating in this round by saying that he doesn't feel like putting his shoes on. He gets immediately called out by Yarka, who ironically points out the heroic spirit Speedy is displaying, while Mirek leaves, and when he reaches the trees, he has this suspicious feeling that someone is there in the woods, and so he decides to call off the hunt since the forest might not be safe. So rather than risking it, they get ready for sleep, unequip anything that might impede proper rest. But before they can fully enter the land of dreams, the door handle moves. Four of them fearlessly rush towards the door, while Speedy creates a blanket fort for himself, seriously questioning his decision of entering their stupid club, which Mirek jokingly rebukes with requiring Speedy to rip off his beaver of courage the first thing in the morning, which does force him out of his safe space, wielding his weapon of choice that I have mentioned before, but no one seems to be answering their calls when they try to address whoever their night guest was, and since even after a while no one attempts to enter again, it's back to sleep and hopefully this time undisturbed. Next morning, they are gathering some snow into buckets for themselves to make tea and to wash up when a sudden realization struck Indra. He forgot his skis outside, and unsurprisingly, they disappeared during the night, leaving only a trail of footprints behind, which Mirek, Yarka, and Redcap will follow. leaving Speedy and Jindra to guard the fort. So they follow the trail all the way to a hill where some random boys are sledging. And when asked about what could have happened, they point them in a direction of a certain boy who apparently visits the cabin regularly with his friends, making it quite possible that he was the one who took the skis. So they lead the rapid arrows to a building, but clearly scared of whoever's inside, leave the rest to them. When they enter the yard, Redcap immediately spots the skis sticking out of the attic's window, and when they approach a somewhat sketchy looking old man, he just tells them to grab them and get out, which they do, and when they safely return them to the elated Indra, it signals that this long-term adventure in the mountains was saved, with Mirak reminding everyone that it is always important to keep a cool head properly screwed on your shoulders no matter how dire the situation might seem, and that there is always a solution. With this, I'm going to stop here, and next time more repeating myself, using slightly different words to try and describe my ideas about writing, and then more of these wonderful adventures of the club called the Rapid Arrows.